All right, well, I'm going to get started. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Maureen Kelman. I'm a senior facilitator with SAC State Consensus and Collaboration Program, supporting the Floodmar Network and our very wonderful and informative Lunchmar, which we've been doing for 1.5 years now. So this is our first one for 2023, and excited to really start it with a collaborative effort with between DWR, the Floodmar Network, Environmental Defense Fund, and the California Water Data Consortium. This is a really nice crossword for us to meet at and learn more about the groundwater accounting platform in California. So looking forward to a great discussion. Before we get started, just a reminder in terms of participation today on our call that once we get into the presentation, feel free to turn off your video, make sure your audio is muted until the presentation is done, and then, want everybody to be back with us for a conversation. Throughout the presentation, feel free to use the chat panel to add questions and comments. We're going to track those and come back to those at the end of the presentation. Also, this is an informal gathering, so really want to encourage everyone to the extent that you can to use the hand raise function and share your comments and your questions in person so we can really connect with each other. And also, I'm going to have a quick Zoom poll, as we always do, just to kind of check and see who's all here, since we can go around the table and introduce ourselves, but just to get a sense of who's joining and the perspective. So we'll do that in just a minute. The purpose of our Lunchmar monthly meetings is really to share and learn from each other about various research and practical efforts in supporting Floodmar project implementations and related activities. We also hope that this is also a place where we can connect with each other and find ways to collaborate. So as we have these discussion and conversation, feel free to use the chat and connect with others and react to other comments in the chat and in our discussion in the second half of the Lunchmar. So who's here? I'm going to put a quick poll, and today the poll has 3 questions. We're asking you to let us know where do you primarily work geographically, and also to let us know, if you scroll down, the second question is your primary perspective. What lens do you bring into this conversation? And lastly, because this is a joint collaboration, we're very curious to know if you heard about this through your Floodmar network or Data for Lunch, or are you connected to both already? And this is just curiosity of wanting to know how people are connected to this topic. And I see people are responding to this. So please let us know. And as always, we don't have all the answers in these multiple choice, so feel free to add in the chat a little bit more about who you are and the perspective that you bring into it. And I'm going to give it another 10 seconds, and I'll share the poll results, and then we'll move forward. Okay, so hopefully everybody who wanted to participate had a chance to do so. Okay. All right, so you should be able to scroll down now the results in front of you, where you can see where participants are coming from, diverse perspective joining us today, and a nice showing for both Floodmar and Data for Lunch. So thank you everybody for sharing and for joining today. All right, so to start with, I just want to invite Mike Antos to kind of kick off our presentation today. Mike is a principal at Stantec. He's a social scientist focused on helping people and institutions navigate place, time, and culture to achieve equitable and sustainable outcomes. Mike both loves and has proven track record of coordinating complex multi-jurisdictional and publicly engaged water resources efforts. Mike is an environmental fellow of the Robert and Patricia Switzer Foundation and currently serves on the steering committee of the California Water Data Consortium. And of course, just also in addition to that, just to say that I've had the pleasure of working with Mike as part of our efforts to support the development of the Floodmar network. And so I'm gonna turn it over to you, Mike, to kick us off.
Thanks, Arit. I appreciate it. Those bios always look better on the page than when you hear them out loud. Anyway, it's always cringy, I suppose, to hear it a little bit. It's really my pleasure to be both part of the facilitation team that's been supporting the network grow. Earlier, I was on the research advisory committee of Floodmar, and now sort of as both a facilitator of the network, but also a member as well. I really thought that today's co-production would be really valuable. I'm one of, I imagine, several on this call that are a bridge point between these two efforts of Floodmar and the California Water Data Consortium. So I was really excited to propose this idea of a co-pro, as they say in the entertainment industry, which I know about because I'm down here in Southern California. This co-pro of a data for lunch session and a Lunchmar session being together, because these are two networks that have a lot of crossover. If you're here from Data for Lunch and you don't know Floodmar or vice versa, this is a great opportunity to recognize that there's something to be had in both places. And I would really love to then pass this over to Tara, Tara Moran's the Chief Executive Officer of the California Water Data Consortium. And prior to being at the consortium, she led the Sustainable Groundwater Program at Water in the West at Stanford. And Tara and I have something in common. We both hold PhDs in geography. So it's been great working with Tara the last couple of years. And I'll let Tara introduce the Data for Lunch side of this co-production.
Awesome. Thank you. Huge thank you to Mike and Arit and the entire Floodmar or the Lunchmar team for the invitation and the ability to have a joint lunch event together. So thank you for that. Just briefly, for those of you who may not be familiar with the California Water Data Consortium, we were founded in 2019 to support implementation of the Open and Transparent Water Data Act, often referred to as AB 1755. And as all of you here well know, data can and really should be at the heart of informed water management here in California and beyond. And that's really the vision for the consortium, is that in partnership with state agencies, NGOs, private sector, academia, and many others, we support the development of and improved accessibility to high quality, trusted water data to support better water management, both here in California and beyond. And as part of our work, as Mike indicated, we host what we call our Data for Lunch events, and they're loosely on a quarterly basis. And they have goals very aligned with the Lunchmar goals. So our goals are really to learn about new and innovative water-related data methods and technologies, to share important learning on water data topics, and then really just to learn from and connect with one another. And it's really those connections that are so important when we think about sustainable water management here in California and beyond. And so just really thankful to be here today. So without further ado, I'd like to transition us to our presentation. Just as a very little bit of background, the California Water Data Consortium recently received funding from the Department of Water Resources to expand functionality to an open source groundwater accounting platform that was originally developed by Environmental Defense Fund in partnership with Rosedale Rio Bravo Water Storage District in California Central Valley. And we're so pleased to be advancing that work, to continue advancing that work in partnership with Environmental Defense Fund. And so with that, I'd like to introduce our two speakers today. Hannah Ake, Senior Program Manager with the California Water Data Consortium, and Mike Myatt, Senior Director of Climate Resilient Water Systems at Environmental Defense Fund. And jointly, they're going to walk you through the project vision and this next phase of platform development. which will include integration of an open source scenario planning tool. And so in the interest of time, I won't read their very impressive bios. I will drop a link to both of them into the chat when I'm finished here. But I did want to just say a couple of things about both Hannah and Mike, because they are just such incredible people to work with and really to move this work forward. And so firstly, I just want to say both of them have incredibly diverse backgrounds. Hannah in data, oceanography, state agency work, and water management. Mike in finance, state government, philanthropy, among many other things. And so it's really this breadth of experience that is necessary, I think, for collaborative work like is being undertaken with the Groundwater Accounting Platform. But that's also combined with their just really strong commitment to collaborative process and their uncompromising desire to support sustainable water management with data to support it and the science to really support the decision-making process. And again, I think you'll see that come through as they talk about the next phase of development for the Groundwater Accounting Platform. And then finally, I just want to say they're really incredible people, so much fun to work with. I feel honored every day to get to do so. And so we really do have a fantastic team advancing this work. And with that, I'd like to hand it over to Mike.
Thank you, Tara. What a nice introduction. I agree with Mike on the cringiness of hearing all of the stuff in your career read to you. So it was very nice to hear your kind words to get this started. Want to thank also Mike and the FLEDMAR team for inviting us. Excited to be here and tell you about what we're up to with development of this tool together. Great, thank you, Hannah. Let's go to the next slide. First, I just want to give an orientation to what we're going to be talking to you about today. So we're going to be sharing about the vision for the project and providing a little context for you, what it's about, talking about some of the nuts and bolts of the timeline and venues for participation, so you all understand if you're interested where you might plug in. And then we want to give you kind of a brief overview, kind of high-level snapshot of what the platform looks like. And that's where I'll turn it over to Hannah to drive and talk through what our platform exactly does. And you can see some screenshots and such. And then we want to definitely make sure we allow time to hear your feedback and comments and hear your questions. And we'll have a couple of questions for you as well at the end to help prompt some of that if you don't have any for us. Let's go to the next slide. So first, before we dive into the details, just want to take a couple minutes to talk about the overall vision for the Groundwater Accounting Platform and the impetus behind all of this work. Ultimately, it boils down to the vision for the project really providing local agencies with high quality data and open source tools that are necessary to help them better manage water resources during drought and support them in transitioning to long-term groundwater sustainability under SGMA. EDF started this several years ago with Rosedale Rio Bravo, and Tara noted, and we're very excited to now have not only philanthropic support for this, but also really important public support, financial support from the Bureau of Reclamation and the state, and have partnership with the Department of Water Resources and the State Water Resources Control Board, and with the consortium in an important role, partnering and leading this in California. We see this as a great opportunity to advance work that's already underway and ensure that it's useful not only to landowners and water managers and GSAs, but also to the state at large. So part of the vision is that this is something that can grow and be used and be an authoritative source across the state as we're implementing SGMA. Let's go to the next slide. So I mentioned open source. That was sort of dropped into what I was just saying in the vision. It's such an important part of the vision. We thought we should pause for a moment and talk a little bit about why that matters and what it means. The platform was developed from the very beginning and is still using open source code. And that allows other water agencies, and it means others can use it, contribute to it, modify it. It's on GitHub. People can find instructions and find the code and information they need to take it and modify it for their own use without the need to have license fees or subscription services to do that. That's important, we think, for scalability, and it helps make the tool more cost effective as more folks come on and use the tool. It also helps with other things like integration within and across basins and things like that we'll be talking about later. Open source does not mean it's all like wild, wild west open to everybody. There's definitely security and privacy matters that are taken very seriously and considered and taken care of through the platform. It's just really how the code is handled and making it more free and available for folks to find and use on their own. And part of the vision too is that as folks make improvement to it, we hope they keep that also open source and put that out there for the community to continue to learn from and benefit from in other places. Let's go to the next slide. Okay. So we've got a couple of main objectives that we wanted to talk through with you for this project. One is probably pretty obvious, which is platform scaling, really with the support from the state and then the funding from DWR. This allows us to leverage work that's already been done and bring in different complications and opportunities in different regions and make the tool, like add refinements and functionalities to the tool so that it can be more broadly usable and applicable in more places across the state. And so scaling and making this a tool that's usable in many different places is an important part of the project. Also, we are interested in co-developing common groundwater data reporting formats. And this is really important so that you can have more consistency and so that data can talk to each other more. And that's something that we will be working very closely with DWR on and ensuring that that's closely tied to the work that they're doing under AB 1755 implementation related to data standards. Let's go to the next slide. So why now and why is this important? So this is really kind of the meat of why we're excited to come and talk to you today. So we're coming up on 8 years since SGMA was passed, and it's as anybody who's involved with that knows, very challenging. It's really difficult out there, and we're hearing it's local agencies and stakeholder groups are still struggling with how to best collect and use information in their basin, how to make informed decisions, ultimately how to determine the best way to translate those decisions into management actions, which is an important aspect of implementing SGMA, is the actions that are actually taken to get to a sustainable condition. So we feel that the Groundwater Accounting Platform is coming along at a really critical time where we are with SGMA, as well as we're starting to implement those plans. First, I just mentioned open source code. That is really important because it makes it more scalable and accessible, as we said. And it allows agencies and GSAs to contribute to and modify the platform to meet their local needs, which is a really important aspect of SGMA itself, which is that it's locally driven and locally implemented. And so this allows folks to pick it up, have something to start with, and tweak what they need to make it their own without having to start from the beginning and reinvent the wheel. And because the platform provides a great framework for consistent data reporting and water accounting, it allows managers to easily facilitate intra-basin coordination, which is required by SGMA, and also interbasin coordination. And as more people use it, potentially regional scale analysis. So the goal here is really to support local agencies and landowners to set district level water budgets, which they need to do under SGMA, track their allocations against those, help communicate those goals to landowners in a user-friendly way that will support compliance with those goals. We're really excited to hear from you today and learn from you. I mean, there's a lot of folks here that came from the FloodMAR side of things. And so it allows us to get feedback in sort of a targeted way in a larger venue. I think I mentioned the public support already, but I failed to mention that there was a press release that the state recently put out. I'm thinking maybe somebody could drop that into the chat for the folks here to go find. And that was expressing excitement for the contracts that were just executed with the state that sort of kicks things off. There was also a recent blog post that Tara did with Stephen Springhorn that I think it would be nice to drop into the chat. Thank you, Tara. So just so you can get a flavor of what's out there now and the communications that are happening and why this is important. I really wanted to plug that podcast. It's really great. Let's go to the next slide. Wanted to talk a little bit about the project team and their roles on the project. So I'm at EDF, as was mentioned, and before I started at EDF, they got this started several years ago with Rosedale Rio Bravo, and we are now closely working with the consortium who is bringing together all of the different various funding and partners and helping us drive this thing. OpenET is an important part of this, and they're providing technical assistance so that we can integrate consumptive use information into the tool. We have ESA, Environmental Science Associates, formerly Sitka. They have been with us from the beginning, creating the tool that is now being used in Rosedale Rio Bravo, and continue to provide the technical chops so that, they're the ones actually writing the code so that we actually can create this thing. Olson is a group that brings the groundwater evaluation toolbox, or GET engine. Hannah will be talking more about that in her portion, but they're also an important technical partner. And we have pilot partners and advisory groups that I'm going to be talking about on the next slide. So maybe we'll go to those to talk about those guys. Okay, so these are our pilot partners. First, I mentioned Rosedale Rio Bravo Water Storage District. They helped get this started. They were the first. And we're really excited that we still have them with us. So they are already finding the tool to be helpful in their district. And they also have been willing to continue to work with us and coordinate and collaborate with the other pilot partners and help provide feedback on the changes that we're making to the tool as we go on. And then with the additional state funding that we have been grateful to receive, provided an opportunity to bring additional pilot partners so that we could bring in different unique complexities and opportunities in different parts of the state. And when we were looking for which partners to bring in, we wanted ones that had immediate drought issues and could benefit from this. We prioritized project partners that were located in groundwater basins that had significant groundwater overdraft challenges, and locations where underserved communities vulnerable to domestic well failures were located there. It was also critically important that they had the capacity to engage in the project. You'll see in a minute when I talk about our stakeholder engagement, how much they're putting into this too with our team. And that helps ensure the success of the individual pilots so that they're happy and getting what they need, but also supporting our vision to scale this and share lessons learned across the state. So that led us to 3 new pilot partners, Merced Irrigation Urban GSA, and they really see the platform as an important tool to help landowners better understand their surface and groundwater budgets as they implement allocations, and are also interested in exploring incorporating well registration into the platform if feasible. And Pajaro Valley Water Management Agency, and they are really interested in using the platform and the new GET integration scenario planning to improve the knowledge of their water use by parcel and identify conservation opportunities in their basin. And they're also providing great information to the scientific community because they're also comparing their metered production data with their flow model that they're using locally and OpenET satellite consumptive use information. And then we have Yolo County Flood Control and Water Conservation District, and they really see the platform as a way to synthesize their conjunctive water supplies and hoping to eventually integrate surface water supplies alongside groundwater data on the platform. So it gives you a sense of who we're working with and how they each are bringing something unique and different to this project, and we're really excited to have them. This maybe, I can't see the chat, but if we haven't done it yet, this would be a good chance to drop into the chat the blog that the consortium and EDF worked on together. It really highlighted our pilot partners and why they wanted to do this with us and what their engagement is related to. Let's go to the next slide. So this is stakeholder engagement and public outreach. Wanted to talk a little bit about how we're tackling this and opportunities to engage. I'm going to start with the public meetings first. This is just opportunities like this one where we can engage a little bit of a broader audience and have a chance to share with the public what we're doing and make sure that people are aware of the pilots and the work. And that allows us to get broad feedback that aren't in the usual groups that we're meeting with all of the time to constantly be getting feedback from. The meeting today is kind of like that. It also bleeds into what I would consider targeted outreach, which this is an opportunity either for us to meet with folks who hear about the project and they want to go a little bit more deep. They want us to do a demo or explain what we're up to and better understand our tool. We're happy to take those sorts of meetings and do outreach in that way. We also sometimes will reach out to folks on our own because we want to solicit feedback from them on a particular topic or issue. And so we have opportunities to do those sorts of things ad hoc. And then that brings me to our working groups. So kind of baked into this project, we have quarterly working groups that ensures coordination with our pilot partners and also with local and state water agencies, water managers, non-governmental organizations, community-based organizations, landowners, academic institutions, and others to collaboratively integrate and expand the functionality of this tool to support local water accounting and scenario planning and facilitate long-term sustainability under SGMA. So we have two primary quarterly working groups. One is what we call an advisory and platform scaling group. And they help support and guide broad platform development decisions. And so that also, that involves platform development and functionality and scenario planning and those sorts of things, and gives us a chance to check in with them very regularly and hear their feedback and advice along the way. And then we also have a technical working group that also meets quarterly, and that supports technical decisions related to the platform development and data integration and other technical questions. Our team also meets weekly, and we have monthly meetings with our pilot partners. So more regularly than the quarter meetings, the pilot partners participate in the other meetings as well, but we want to be meeting with them very regularly along the way to incorporate their feedback as we're adding functionalities for them and for others across the state. Please reach out to us. At the end of this, we'll have contact information for Hannah and me. We'll be doing kind of a high-level overview today, but we also have the ability to go much deeper and bring in our technical team and so forth to give a more deep demo if that's of interest to any of you. Let's go to the next slide. I think I'm going to be passing to you here soon, Hannah. This is the last one for me. Apologies for my clock in the background and my dog jumping on and off the bed. Okay, so I want to just end my section on the timeline a little bit and kind of where we are with the project. There's three main phases to the project. It's important to note that we've been at this for a while, but we also, it kind of feels like in a way we're just getting started because we've executed the contracts for the state, and that's really big for this. But we are in the middle of phase 2. And so the three main phases, phase 1 was about expanding platform accessibility and functionality, and that is complete. That was really, I would say, setting the stage for the work that we're doing now with a pilot partner. So are things like developing the technical infrastructure to support the scaling of the platform, developing the technical infrastructure to support the scenario planning, working with the pilot partners to understand the needs and local conditions and data sets that they had available, and to get things ready to be able to integrate statewide data sets, including groundwater elevations, those sorts of things. Phase 2 is where we're currently at, and that will extend through the end, towards the end of this year, I think. That's continuing to work with state and local agencies and stakeholder groups to first continue tailoring the platform to meet local needs. Very focused on building platform functionalities that are likely to meet the greatest needs across GSAs, continuing to integrate data sets from our different pilot basins, and tackling challenges along the way so that we can make this a tool that's usable and flexible and adaptable in other places. Also developing workflows to facilitate local data integration. Towards the end of this phase is the scenario planning functionality, and we're actually starting to embark on that with Olson, and I'll let Hannah get into that a little bit more when she talks in a moment. The next phase after this one will start probably towards the end of this year, early next year, and that is the ongoing integration of hydrologic models to continue to support the scenario planning, and also starting to do things like supporting water trading. We have a current water trading module, but that's not our focus right now, because we're really focused on the accounting and the building blocks that make other management actions and trading and other sorts of modules work. But we anticipate beginning that in phase 3. I think with that, Hannah, I think I pass to you.
Yeah, thanks everyone. Thanks, Mike. So Mike and Tara kind of briefly touched on this, but I wanted to start with some background on the platform, because I know some of you are familiar with it and some aren't. And so just want to kind of start with the work that's been done to date to provide kind of a jumping off point before we get into a brief demo. And so the platform was originally developed starting in 2018 by EDF and Rosedale Rio Bravo Water Storage District, as Tara mentioned. And Rosedale was really especially interested in a tool like this because they're a large agency. They're located in the San Joaquin Valley in Kern County. The district itself is about 44,000 total acres, and about half of that is irrigated acreage with permanent crops. And they're considered critically overdrafted under SGMA. And so really for a lot of different reasons, they were a really great partner to have early on in this work. And so to sort of solicit initial feedback and develop the initial platform, EDF and Rosedale hosted a series of landowner workshops. And there it became really clear that the landowners wanted something not only really effective, but really straightforward and user-friendly. And so we've tried to really keep this in mind as we work to expand the platform to our new regions with our new pilots. And so overall, I would say the platform in Rosedale has really been a huge success. Rosedale continues to use the platform and has been doing so for a little over a year now. They've tracked about 120,000 acre feet of water use in their first year on the platform. And so ultimately, what really leads us here today is that because the platform was developed directly with Rosedale, the current iteration of the platform is really catered just to them. And so with the help of DWR and our other partners, we're really excited that the next phase of this work is going to involve expanding the platform, making it more scalable, more accessible, with more functionalities, which will ultimately make it much more useful for a wider variety of GSAs. And so the expansion and scaling of the platform is really going to boil down to kind of these 3 key components. And so the first is that we'll be working to integrate additional data sets, like Mike mentioned. We're thinking metered data into the platform, as well as integrate publicly available groundwater elevation and use data. And so the platform currently runs using water usage data from OpenET, but including additional data sets alongside OpenET, like meter data, is really going to help kind of improve scenario planning down the line for our users, and ultimately will help to ensure that this accounting tool is useful to a broad range of districts and GSAs, and then flexible to their specific geographies. And so the meter data or other data integrated into the platform really does not need to be open source, and often won't be open source. But because the Groundwater Accounting Platform and OpenET are open source, we're really kind of able to build up a framework that is ready to go for most users, and then adaptable for regions that might want to use their own meter data in their analysis. And so we're going to be working to expand these platform functionalities to include decision support tools, which will ultimately tie into the expansion of the scenario planning and then the visualization functionalities on the platform. And so to support these components of the process, we're working with Olson, who Mike mentioned earlier. They're an engineering firm based in Nebraska, and we're integrating their groundwater evaluation toolbox, or known as GET. And so GET is a really cool cloud-based visualization tool that uses groundwater flow models to enable water managers to kind of run and evaluate the effects of management scenarios like pumping or recharge in near real time, and then visualize those impacts. And so currently GET uses ModFlow, but as part of our scope of work with DWR, we're currently working to integrate IWFM into GET. And so this means that users are really going to be able to calculate water levels and budgets using ModFlow or IWFM with distinct model pipelines, and then run these groundwater management scenarios to evaluate projected hydrological outcomes before they need to take specific management actions. And so each of these elements from the scope of work is really going to build on one another. And so some features and functionalities are kind of going to be prioritized as they'll help to make up the foundation of future expansion of the platform. But we're really working closely with our pilot partners, as Mike mentioned, to kind of identify which features are most critical to them as we prioritize. And so without further ado, we kind of wanted to give you a brief snapshot and a demo of the platform. So this is a demo site that we've developed using anonymized data. Obviously, our pilots have dashboards with private landowner information, so that's why you see the EDF logo at the top here. We're currently working to update the platform with our new pilots, and so the look and feel of this will change as we sort of build on and expand the existing functionalities. But I wanted to walk us through the two sort of primary user interfaces on the platform, so the manager dashboard or the owner and landowner dashboard. And so primarily the main differences between those dashboards are about data access and management geography. So if I log in as a manager, I'm able to invite landowners in my GSA and then visualize data across the geography that I oversee. So I could bill customers for water, I could monitor and report groundwater use, I could potentially evaluate hydrologic impacts of groundwater pumping, I could facilitate the transfer of allocations even at the request of one of my landowners. Whereas if I'm a landowner or an owner, on the other hand, I will only be able to visualize data for the geographies that I own. So I might own land in multiple GSAs, and the platform would actually allow me to toggle between those GSAs or those geographies under one login instance, and then manage each area that I own under this one platform. And so I could view and manage my water budget, I could track water use over time, I could track water use by parcel. As Mike mentioned, I could potentially eventually post offers to buy and sell water and then track market metrics. And so with all that said, Mike kind of got at this earlier, but we like to make it really clear that we take data privacy super seriously. And so the landowners and managers will only have data access that's appropriate to their ownership and their geography. And so it's really not possible to see data that you shouldn't be seeing or that isn't yours. And so I've just logged in as a manager at that last screenshot that I showed you. And so this is the dashboard that comes up. Again, the look and feel of this is going to change slightly, but the functionalities are still in place. It looks pretty similar to a checking account, as you'll notice, but I'm able to toggle between years here. I'm able to get an overview of my district's supply and usage for that year, and then get a more detailed breakdown of some district-wide statistics. And then if I scroll down on that page, I get this account usage report, which gives me a ledger of the landowners in my district and their associated total supply. I can see a bit more information associated with them, like that native yield. And then, as Mike mentioned, trade activity is not currently being built out under this phase of work, but we like to include it here in the demo site as it is a module that we can build out. And so if I navigate to the geographic view as a manager, the parcel view, I'm able to get this district-wide map of all the parcels in my district. And so I can click on any one of these parcels to get more information about that parcel specifically. And so I'm able to see how large the area is, the APN number, and then who owns that land specifically. And if I click on the landowner name, I'm able to get a better overview of that landowner specifically and see how their usage is tracking by year, their total supply, and then just more details associated with that landowner. And so if I had logged in as a landowner on that first page that I showed you, this is what I would see on my dashboard. So kind of similar to the manager dashboard, but I'm only seeing data associated with the parcel that I own. So I'm not seeing district-wide information here, but similar tools are available to me. So I'm able to toggle between years here. I'm able to get a breakdown of my allocation and usage over that year. And then if I click on one of these menu items, I'm able to get kind of a clearer snapshot of the different water types associated with my allocation. And this is pretty important for landowners as there are different rules associated with different water types. So we wanted to provide that accessibility here. And then again, pretty similar to the manager dashboard, I'm able to navigate as a landowner to my parcel view or my geographic display. So I get a map of my parcel here, and then estimated water use provided by OpenET for that parcel in any given year. So pretty cool, basic functionalities here. And so kind of all of these foundational features are going to help better support managers and landowners as they sort of try to understand the potential benefits or pitfalls of any particular groundwater management activity they're considering. And so we mentioned GET, but by integrating GET into the platform, we're really able to kind of build out these additional scenario planning functionalities. And so an example of one of these functionalities is a scenario planning tool focused on recharge, or recharge planning activities. And so this is a screenshot of a potential recharge scenario. The map shows the location of arsenic contamination, the location of nearby communities, and then the location of domestic wells. And so with the scenario planning functionality embedded into the platform, district managers or owners are really kind of better able to determine which recharge basins at their disposal might be most appropriate or effective to utilize for a specific management action. And so they can determine how that might affect groundwater levels or nearby communities before implementing a specific action. And so we're really kind of excited about this phase of work and continuing to work with our pilot partners and our advisory groups to build out functionalities like this and keep getting their input on what is most important to prioritize. And so without going into too much more detail, I just wanted to flag these resources online for you all. We have a demo platform website, which I just shared some screenshots from, a story map, and then the source code on GitHub. Again, I mentioned we're working to update all of these materials to incorporate our new pilot partners. So the look is going to change, and there's going to be some more info added to each of these, but they're really good basis to start with. And then, of course, as Mike mentioned, if you have any other questions or want to set up a demo, we're always happy to do that. So please reach out. But I think I'll turn it over to Mike Antos now for questions.
Thanks, Hannah and Mike. That's a really great presentation. And I know you have questions for us, so you're looking not just for questions from the audience, but also answers from the audience, which is always fun.
Yeah.
But one that I saw that might be a good place to start is something that Lisa asked. And Lisa, I don't know if you want to come on and voice your question or if you'd prefer me to. Lisa Porta.
Hi, I'm happy to voice it. Yeah, I was, a lot of GSAs have developed these big models for their GSPs. And so they take quite a bit of time to update. They're very detailed. So it was just interesting to see the modeling functionality in the water accounting platform. And so I don't know if there's additional information that can be shared on how that will work, because the near real time is often not something we know. We do a lot in groundwater modeling, right? It doesn't go that fast. So
yeah, I say near real time, and I think it takes about an hour or so in our current tests. And I invite Mike and Tara to correct me on that time frame if I'm wrong. But yes, near real time. Also, I realize it's subjective.
that is actually really fast. I'm talking
Yeah.
about when you update model inputs and for scenarios, I mean, these models require tons of data to be updated. So you may not have the answer to this detailed technical question yet, but it's something that a lot of the technical community will be interested in understanding better once you include the get functionality in there. So, yeah.
Great, thank you, Tara.
I'm happy to just weigh in briefly on that, Lisa, because I think it's a great question. And just to be clear, it's not updating the model itself with new data. It's updates and changes to the executable files that it then runs in the cloud. Just to make that clarification, I guess. But would be happy to provide further demonstration if that would be helpful.
Thanks for that clarification, Tara.
Thanks.
So I'm looking for also anybody who wants to put their hand up, feel free, but I do have some more to go to in the chat. I saw Nathaniel started a question and then Graham added a little bit to it, but Nathaniel, do you want to come on and voice your question or would you like me to read it?
Yeah, I'm happy to voice it just as soon as I find the mute button. So I know there's a number of other folks working on scenario planning, particularly on the land use side of it, and that includes us at the Department of Conservation. I'm curious whether the scenario planning that you're intending to do includes at present things like crop choices, other forms of land use conversion, or agricultural management practices within the scenario planning that may feed into the rest of the recharge rates and the accounting process.
Maybe this is a good time. I'll get started and then Hannah or Tara weigh in. We're not looking to reinvent the wheel or elbow out of the way like pre-existing awesome tools that are scenario planning that already is happening. In fact, part of the work we're doing with each of our pilot partners is understanding what models and tools they're already using and figuring out how that might sync up with or integrate or complement the platform and vice versa. And we're having conversations with different folks in those places to figure that out. So I just wanted to say that first to answer your question is like what scenarios we actually do. It's kind of an endless list of opportunities, and we're looking to probably have some baseline things that people can have access to within the tool, but also have the flexibility to bring in pre-existing efforts where applicable, especially as we're scaling this in California. As to your very specific question, I don't know if Hannah or Tara wants to weigh in with thoughts, but that's how I would answer it generally.
Yeah, that's great, Mike. And we are not getting down to kind of the nitty-gritty of crop modeling specifically for scenario planning. But the great thing about GET is they've kind of built in these scenario planning modules with their development associated with ModFlow. And so we're working to kind of build on those resources and create new scenarios in addition to those, and then also build out those scenarios for IWFM. And so, you know, not getting into the nitty-gritty of crops, but building out potential scenarios so that you could use them on each model.
Mike, did you want me to answer Graham's follow-up question on OpenET? I think you alluded to.
Yeah, I think in Graham was building off of Nathaniel, but there's a number of questions here that are questions about specific elements of what will be in the future work. And to the extent to which you know any of those answers, we can jump to those. But maybe the general way to answer those questions is share again opportunities that you'll have in the future for people who want to weigh in on one little piece of what you're trying to solve, when they'll be able to help contribute to those decisions.
Yeah, and so, you know, public meetings like this is where we want to hear about tools you all already know about, that we should be aware of, that our efforts complement well. And so please feel free to flag any that you think we should know about and look into. We also really invite people to attend our quarterly meetings or these more public meetings like this to weigh in and provide advice. We like hearing from all of you as we expand the platform. And then this is also kind of where our pilots come in, because we're prioritizing what is important to them and kind of which features they are willing to be champions for, because we really want to work with them to build a tool that's useful right away in their management under Sigma.
And do you have an answer for Graham, Mike, other than maybe?
Yes.
Oh, good. Okay.
Yes, I do have an answer. And the answer is yes. So OpenET is sort of what is going to be integrated and available as sort of like a base option, I guess, is the way we're envisioning it. But we also recognize folks are already using other means of measuring consumptive use and maybe have invested heavily in that. And the platform, to be scalable, really needs to be agnostic about that and be able to have the capability to do that. And we're fortunate to be able to test that. In Kern County with Rosedale, they're going with Land IQ now as one example, and we'll be figuring out how to incorporate that into the platform so that we can use that way of doing it. So the answer is yes.
I'm going to take the privilege of the microphone and ask a question of my own. I'm curious, what has been the feedback you've gotten from landowners who are currently being asked to participate and use the instrument in the pilot work that you've been doing?
I might need to lean on someone who's been meeting with, I'm new enough to this that I haven't been meeting with landowners very much yet. But maybe Hannah, you have knowledge of it, or Tara.
Yeah, I'll ask Tara to chime in, because I think she was probably deeply embedded in the initial workshops. But we have landowners serve on our advisory groups and on our technical working groups as well. And so that has been a great avenue to get their feedback and really what we're hearing from them. And we had an advisory meeting yesterday, and it was, you know, as landowners, we need detailed information available to us. And so any scenario planning functionalities that you're building out should not just be for district managers and for GSA managers. It really needs to be available and easy to use for landowners as well, because they're making these decisions on a regular basis. So I would say they're enthusiastic and definitely want more of what they're seeing, I think.
Anything to add, Tara?
No, I'd say +1 to that. And I think the one other thing I would add, maybe twofold, would be one, what a lot of what we're hearing is the need for landowners to have tools that scale across basins, both within basins and where there's multiple GSAs or local governing agencies. And so having tools that really are operating at the basin scale or beyond is really important. And that's part of something that we've certainly been thinking about with the platform itself. And so I think they see the value of that moving forward, particularly as it scales. And then the other thing I just wanted to circle back to was Nate's comment and Graham's comments about land IT and the integration of land use data and crop type data. Nate, it would be great to touch base with you to hear about DOC's efforts along that venue and I guess the trajectory for that work, because as Hannah indicated, we're working right now to integrate IWFM models and where agencies have existing groundwater models, whether they're the IWFM or ModFlow. I know they certainly would be interested in updating those data if the state is going to be providing it. And so it would be great for us to understand what's happening there as a way to potentially make those data better available to integrate into the models moving forward.
Yeah, and pivoting back to your question, Mike, I will add that, I think we've focused a lot on this next phase of development in terms of developing a very user-friendly and straightforward to use tool, which I mentioned earlier. And part of that, which Tara flagged, is landowners that are managing across GSAs didn't want to have to log in to YOLO's platform and Rosedale's platform and Pajaro's platform. They wanted to be able to go to one place, one platform where they could get familiar with the tool and manage the parcels they own in multiple GSAs, but under one tool. And so that, as we're kind of scaling the platform and building out the user interface, it's decisions like that where we're really focused on landowners and the users that I think is going to make it much more used and scalable down the line.
So I know we need to turn it back over to Arit very quickly to close the meeting down, but I did want to give somebody an opportunity to answer quickly to Camille's question in the chat, which is, will new features in the multiple versions of the platform be shared to the platform community, and who will be managing the platform version control?
Yes, so that will be the version control, I think, will be tracked under GitHub, and that is all basically as modules are developed or as new features are developed, the source code will be available there from the platform.
Fantastic. Well, thanks to everyone who joined us today and all the great questions. I think we got to most of them, but you have contact information for all of the speakers if you want to reach out for more details or a question you hadn't thought of yet. And back over to you, Arit, to close us up.
Yeah, great. Thank you. That was a great presentation. And thanks, Mike, for moderating a great discussion. Hopefully this have provided a lot of food for thoughts in terms of in the coming years as this tool continue and develop, what are the opportunities as you pose in your question at the bottom of your presentation for people to kind of think through where they can see that tool being used in their worlds. So thank you very much. Thank you, Tara, Mike, and Hannah for joining us at our Learn Smart today. We have, for just to kind of let people know, March coming up around the corner. We're going to have Rob Gailey of Gailey Consulting present on investigation of sediment architecture for developing and manage aquifer recharge program. So we're thinking about that next month. And with that, thank you everyone for joining, and hope you have a great rest of the day.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks, everyone.